Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing all right on this rainy Wednesday, at least here in New York City. It's great to see you all, or to see your names. And welcome to the Brooklyn Rails Wednesday afternoon poetry reading series. Our event today, which is somehow the 113th of these weekly readings, is curated by Zoe Tuck, and the title of today's reading is The Subterranean Affiliations of the Trees. I will introduce Zoe in just a minute, who will then introduce our terrific readers for today: Serena Bhandar, María José Giménez, Tina Lentz-McMillan, and Germ, Lynn. First, I just want to let everybody know that these readings are recorded, and the link for the recording will be up on the Rails website probably just a little bit later this week and available to circulate. My name's Anselm Berrigan. I'm the poetry editor for the Brooklyn Rail. I just forgot for a split second what it is that I do, and I also work on these readings with the terrific staff here, Eleanor and Chloe and Carolyn and Ty. And this is also part of the quasi-new social environment and the 702nd episode of that. These things happen every day at 1 o'clock. And if you pay attention to the chat, if you haven't been here before, you will find information about the Rail and also about the readers with links to their various works and endeavors as they each step up to the proverbial mic. I'm really happy and grateful to have Zoe Tuck putting this together in reading today. Zoe Tuck was born in Texas, became a person in California, and now lives in Massachusetts. She is the author of Terror Matrix, From Timeless Infinite Light, and the chapbooks Vape Cloud of Unknowing from Belladonna, and the Book of Bella from Double Cross Press, the latter of which is bound in a do-si-do edition with Emily Hunter Waddle's Peach Woman, forgive me. In addition to teaching private creative writing and literature classes, Zoe is the co-host of the Northampton-based but also reading series with Britt Billmeyer Finn, and the co-editor of Hot Pink magazine with Emily Bark Brown. Since 2019, she's been an active member of the Belladonna Collaborative, where she has co-curated both the Close Distances and the Influx reading series. Please welcome Zoe Tuck to the Rail reading series.
We're on. Perfect. Thank you so much, Anselm, and thanks to the other Brooklyn Rail folks, and thanks to all of you. This is a really lovely way to spend this midday hour. So yeah, without further ado, I think I'll just introduce everybody in the order that they're reading, and then we can just go straight into uninterrupted poetry. Yeah, that's the dream, uninterrupted poetry. So we're starting with my friend. Well, everyone here is my friend. We're starting with María José Giménez, who is a Venezuelan-Canadian poet, translator, editor, and author of the chapbooks CHELATED, and ENTRETANTO. The 2019 to 2021 Poet Laureate of Easthampton, Massachusetts, and poetry and translation editor for the Massachusetts Review. María José received the 2020 American Academy of Poets Ambroggio Prize for Mara Pastor's bilingual collection, DEUDA NATAL, with Anna Rosenwong. And they're also my friend and sitting next to me. That is not written in the formal bio. Serena Lukas Bhandar is a writer, educator, and witch of Punjabi Sikh and Welsh ancestry, as well as a first-year master's student in English at the University of Calgary, where it is currently snowing up a storm, and she is pursuing a creative thesis about the poet Sappho, transposed to the modern-day world, which is relevant because the title of today's reading, I mean, it's always, Sappho's always relevant, but the title of today's reading is based on a Sapphic poem that I wrote. So there's that. Serena's debut chapbook of poetry, This Dying Body, was published in July with Rahila's Ghost Press. So y'all should get that. Get the chapbooks. I insist on it. I must insist. Next up, we've got Tina Lentz-McMillan, who is a new friend. I'm just going to add to everyone's bio the degree of friendship who I met in a class with that we were both taking from Ella Longpre. And I was like, wow, this Tina person's on fire. Secrets of Curation revealed. Tina Lentz-McMillan is a Filipina-American mestiza poet whose poetry centers mixed identity. Her current work focuses on how this identity can be othering from both sides and interrogates how colonialism can manifest as intergenerational trauma. Symbols manifest, recur, and change across her body of work to engage the reader in myth-making. She is an MFA candidate at Queen's University of Charlotte and currently lives in the lands of the Tohono O'odham and Pascua Yaqui tribe, also known as Tucson, Arizona, with her partner and their dog and cat. Next steps are exploring a borderless poetic. I want us all to get there, to the borderless poetic. I'm sorry for editorializing. This is how I host. Germ Lynn is also my friend because we espouse a poetics of friendship here. Germ Lynn is a writer, cellist, and curriculum developer working in the field of supported living and self-direction for people with disabilities. They live on the unceded and ancestral lands of the Chochenyo Ohlone people, and their work can be found in Vice, Butter Press, The Reservoir, and Rendering Unconscious Psychoanalytic Perspectives, Politics, and Poetry. Their science fiction story, What You Call, was published as a chapbook by Radix Media for their Futures series. And Lynn's first poetry chapbook, Pressured Speech, is available as a trade or gift. Ask a Punk. I don't think I did Ask a Punk. I think I just ordered it off the website. But you can ask me and then I'll feel punk. And that's it. And then myself. So okay, let's get going with María José.
Thank you, Zoe. You need to. Okay, this is where we start giggling. Hi, everyone. I'm going to read a few explorations, some older, some newer, that are coalescing around verb tenses. And some of them are actual experiments and very short. So yeah, that's what's happening. Past preterite. No, preterite. The old man I always see blowing leaves or snow at the end of my street must be sick or gone. The grapevine at the corner, leaf littered at the roots, shaggy over the sidewalk. Present subjunctive. In all the acronyms, always the other. The plus sign added at the end, the irreverent slash splitting, one more box to check in a string of inadequate categories or descriptors. Imperfect tense. Questions like who will count all the small daily disasters? How many days you'll lie alone? Who will be there to bathe your body at the end? And with the dark stuff out of the way, I want to try a little experiment with you. Close your eyes. For real, close your eyes. You can be still or sway a little. Take a slow breath to the count of 4. In for 1, 2, 3, 4. Slowly out for 1, 2, 3, 4. Feel your feet, the ground beneath. Feel the top of your head, the space above and around. Feel your hands, the surfaces they're touching, whether it's your body, what you're sitting on, just the air, the temperature around you. Feel the space between your fingers. Take one more breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. And out for 1, 2, 3, 4. Now open your eyes. Look around you. Look at the screen, all the faces. Esto es familia. This is family. There are so many storylines here. And I could say for sure that we can each tell so many stories. I want to tell you one of them. It's more of a series of snapshots from a place I visit very often. This is called madrugada, which is the word for dawn in Spanish. Madrugada. Ramadan has just begun in the tree-lined city square. 2 benches listen for waves of prayer in the silence between bricks. 1 million keys have entered overnight, turned and screamed at deadbolts until they're allowed into relative safety. People wait in line under the rotting red lights, waiting for the bus to spill and melt into the sidewalk. The courtroom sits empty, waiting for the jury to file in past the raging tail of a dead rat on the concrete. A man runs after a baby carriage, wailing soot in lava at the dead brown cushion he's taking for a stroll. All the margins blur. Los emborrona la calima. Powdered bones, lineages of sand, like so many lines spoken by an almighty sentence. Las palmas is sea foam, broken glass, honking cars, blood or ink pouring down a man's bladed neck, his skull white and leaning into the bubbling peace of dawn. It's knowing enough to know where to turn, to hear the whistle of the knife sharpener, corners announcing the fishmonger's song, sardina, salmonete, lapa, longorones. The glow is not the gentle mist rolling down from Santa Brígida, but a blast of dawn blazing down the hungry hills, crashing all of Valsequillo into the glitter embrace of the bay. The cliffs dotted with caves, the horizon, guanche, on your tongue, a fig, slow burst of flesh and clouds, bare feet pawing the sand. I'm going to tell you another story about family. It begins south of here, across the small sea, on a land at the north of the south of the split continent. From the plains and from the foothills of the Andes. It actually began even farther back, before we crossed the deep, large waters. Some parts in the belly of a ship, some parts on deck. Other lines, other parts, the ones from here, may always remain unnamed, but they're not lost. Yo vengo de mucha gente, como Marcelina, gente de piel canela, brillante de seda, skin of silk and cinnamon, hands and fingers pierced and twisted by labor, mind sharp and gleaming like a needle. Pecho asimétrico, un ojo más dormido que el otro, and fire in her heart. Tierra dentro, a forest, verde, verde, built layer upon layer for millennia, humus of wisdom. Yo vengo del mar, del monte, gente de estambre y madera, gente de sal y selva, isla y volcán. I come from many people, como Corina, piel de luna, ojos de lobo, wolf eyes, the moon on her skin, collector of wild seeds. This is another story about wild seeds. She grew wild tomatoes, the original small fruit that frightened the conquerors. She showed us how to harvest and eat them a handful at a time as they ripened. They only made it to the kitchen as seeds squeezed out to dry on a paper towel for anyone who wanted to plant them. She foraged the bitter brown pods whose name is lost in the recesses of childhood in another tongue. They sat on the windowsill, ready to be chewed and sucked for anything that ailed the gut. Just outside her walk-in closet of a kitchen, a dark space with a tiny window and just enough room for one person to stand in front of the 4-burner gas stove. She cooked early in the morning before the stifling midday heat, left giant pots of soup or stewed meat from the ranch ready to go in case people showed up for lunch. And they did. Summers were peppered with surprising numbers of new cousins. They would walk in through the long saguan after knocking on the metal door with a coin or a key, and she would introduce them. This is Fulanito, son of Fulana. And she'd name a woman whose name none of us cultivated cousins ever recognized or would remember. She never mentioned who their father was or how they came to be relations. Time would reveal more than a few uncles had had a fruitful extracurricular life and had sown the town with their descendants while on family holidays from the big city. My grandmother, mi abuela, fed and watered them all. Now I'll just read one more. Also from Las Palmas. Cochinilla. Island, dark, the blood of berries, birth after birth. How many ways to say red died a dying revolution of pregnant Gauls. History, mealy and obscured by shipping routes. Shipped people, codices, Azteca, Inca, Guanche. Antwerp traded lineages up from a route adjacent to carnal and carnage. Inky pencas bursting harvest in women's hands. Pluck my prickly eyes. I am no pear. Thank you.
And I think are we over to Germ now? Cool.
Hi, thank you. I'm Germ. Glad to be here in the
Yeah, more applause for María José.
audible applause.
Yeah.
Hi.
Cool. So thank you, Zoe, for bringing friends together under the trees. So I think the first thing I'm gonna read is from the Rendering Unconscious, Psychoanalytic Perspectives, Politics and Poetry. It's a mouthful, and it's also a really big book with lots of poets and other things. This first poem is called Status. It's old. I remember one time Facebook made available as like a toy, a little like Markov chain type thing where you could essentially put all your statuses together and form like a super status. So I did that. So this was technically written by Facebook and published on Facebook. They own it. But it's also in this book. And it's a mega status that I kind of tweaked. Status. It is the harvest and our first date at Taco Bell. I celebrated by looking into a girl. My Florida accent really can't stress this. Her lace sleeve drags through the pile of hot sauce, and this forms a heart. And her shoulders set her chandelier earrings to twinkling as she shrugs it off. Love is just like a play, where your words act as feelings and your mask acts as a face. I think about this, and I think I need a really big GIF where my mind goes, because it always goes and sticks on an image. My Florida palms flapping, Spanish moss dripping, and pine cones spinning. Give me my new inspiration. Fashion punk classics, Muppet sex and art shows, love in the back of a vegetable truck. And I will shuffle off my jazz shoes. I will get out of solitary confinement, and I will not look at my phone. The following poems are from Pressured Speech, a little micro chat. Kind of, I guess, trying to make a thematic relation between everything I'm reading, if possible. But I did some work kind of troubling authorship. You know, Facebook wrote the last poem, and for this one, I redacted my diagnosis from the DSM. And the resulting poem is called Subito Forte. They have explained with an intoxication, common persons required to produce, heavy, prolonged use, and persecutory delusions following the code, further withdrawal, current severity. There is evidence from history, both 1 and 2, during or soon, such evidence could sufficiently warrant attention. There is an order present. Record disorder. Before disorder, there is no use. Most of the poems from this book are all about processing diagnosis, and I had one therapist, actually, I had one ex who thought they were my therapist, say that my speech is contoured by pressured speech. And that term always stuck with me. So I tried to make poetry out of it and turn clinical language into ecstatic speech and poetic language. So this poem is called Glossolalia, and that is the phenomenon of speaking in tongues. The sun is really a castle made of sunflowers. I know because I went to heaven. Just had a strange thought that maybe everyone who has ever hurt me is maybe changing, maybe for the better. Someone told me about a seed's undoing, and I wouldn't hear any more meditations on pain, because I felt like a seed between rows of teeth, split and shelled, swallowed and then rocketed, spit trailing me like dust tail, my trajectory reflecting the celestial bodies that rocked me. Imagine heaven, peopled by everyone who has ever hurt me. Imagine sailing past the castle that is really seeds undone, that is really the sun. This one is called Horses. It was published by Butter Press, Queer and Trans Lit Mag. She was first clay, lumpy horse, galloping glide over carpet, like blade to ice, a child's plaything. Back masked by painted saddle, play her in reverse, a thumbprint appears over my other eye on Ash Wednesday. Then she grew synthetic hair, blondie boy, hip shuffling into a dress, like caterpillars to chrysalides, a birthday party, taffeta tutu drag through the thunderstorm. Crack the door a little, and she spits the apples back into the crotch of the tree. Then she grew a broomstick from her throat, hobby horse, used to ride her into the death metal. Like a game of Jenga, towers stretch and sway and serrate against the dappled gray vault of heaven. Crush the sugar cube in your palm, and a sty appears over my other eye on my wedding day. Then she grew an iron shoe in my foyer, lucky girl, winking at the spirits like neon red vacancy signs on the horizon, a soft landing, wooden interiors folding into love letters, knees buckling under the weight of a movie kiss, dust kicked up when you fall so madly in. Stay after the credits, and I fall asleep in the air conditioner, and everything has started over. All right, I'll read two more. Should have read this one first. It's called Overture. Now it's like a penultimate post-overture. I will always need a story. I will break my own heart, collapse, fall in love with the tar pit, get clean again even for the story. Tell me about your harbinger, the crosswalk, knuckles crackling in the speaker box, mutters of the dictator breaking through the crowd surf. Tell me the corner I can find it. Tell me about the future that renders it ubiquitous. Sometimes I feel so greedy for people. I want the people at the Happy Acre, TV dinner people, and the people who run the raptor farm, and the people in hospital ceilings under anesthesia, and the people who never said they didn't want me, and the people who know nothing about it. I saw the advertisement for the Advil and thrilled, even though I'm not sick. Healing seemed spontaneous like joy, and possible like pills. And if you don't mind, I think I'm gonna have to find my last one in my inbox. This is a newer one, but it is going to be published in the Reservoir. Woodbine is like a activist hub in Ridgewood, Queens. spent about 9 years in New York City, and they're publishing their first journal called The Reservoir, and that will be out on, it'll be available at their holiday market. You can go buy it. And I'll drop the link in the chat if you can't go to that. But this poem is called Hostile Architecture. I used to need to be near the nightlife and the opera. Now I just want to live far away from a university and a nuclear reactor. The city locked down and some people were locked out. I won't forget it. The city locked down and some people were locked up. I won't forget it. I bring pizzas from the worker-owned pizza collective to the People's Park, and there are less people every time. Disappearing people like this leaves a stain that people refuse to see. My friend is in tech and reads a lot of theory and told me people are too hung up on intellectual property these days. I find it rich, literally rich. Someone would wax poetic on stealing academically or artistically from peers and wait in line to pay at a Whole Foods. There's this really charmless thing people with means do. Tell the humble origin story of every luxury. Oh, this army of orchids, they are all gifts, actually. Oh, this eco-friendly laundry machine, I bought it secondhand. Sorry, but you can't Scheherazade me into thinking you came by any of this honestly. Thank you.
That was amazing. I love that last one. That's a real phenomenon. You nailed it. Okay, you're not here for my exegesis. Next up, we have Serena.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Zoe, for choosing me for this. It was an instant yes for me, of course, and I just, yeah, just so glad to be in everyone's company today. I'm going to read a few poems from This Dying Body, which is my chapbook, which is unfortunately sold out, but hopefully there'll be more opportunities to read my work soon. Never say no to Zoe, yeah. This chapbook came about kind of as I was procrastinating, working on my novel, and I was just in the midst of the pandemic and feeling like my relationships with substances and my relationships with self-harm and my body were just kind of spiraling, and I needed to process that a lot. So there is content warnings for self-harm and substance use in these poems, and I'll just read a few of them, and then I've got a new poem that's on a similar vein that I'll share as well. The first poem I'll read from this collection is called These Endless Years. Looking back, she wondered if she'd have done things differently had she known. But hindsight is not for Cassandra's truth in retrospect. Her world knew this end was coming long ago, yet it was more preoccupied with death from computer clocks, from counted calendars, from conspiracies, from comets, from LOL. JK, nothing was wrong. She could still go outside and live in her corner of the world. Death was far away. Looking back, she would have had more sex, told people she loved them. She would have stayed in her lilac wood, but dreamt a little bigger, darling. Re-examined her priorities, taken more chances, less risks. LOL, JK. Nothing was wrong. She didn't recoil from others' burning touch. The sky was not on fire. LOL, JK. She could have had it all, rolling joints and watching Tiger Kings. Her city was not full of white supremacists. She still could trust. Waiting to move from her forest, she did not sink further, like a horse into swamp. So this book is kind of structured after the book and movie The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. And there's a section in that book and movie that's particularly inspired this book where the unicorn who's it's a fantasy. So the unicorn is transformed into a human woman because she is trying to escape from this monster, and she is so horrified to be turned from an immortal being to a human flesh and blood woman that she's like she's screaming, "I can feel this body dying all around me." And I thought that kind of almost hysterical but also very human kind of emotion really captured a lot of the emotions I was having during the pandemic and still am having. But so I'll read the title poem now. And it's called This Dying Body, of course. She's so burnt out. She's the candle with a wick lit at either end, midnight oil bubbling away, the coals, not the wood. She's carcinogenic. She's so tired. She can't fall asleep. She can't. I'm losing years of my life. In one direction to a fire that devours my future, all our futures. And in the other to smoke that obliviates my memories, erases my past. I am not the phoenix after all. There is no reverting back to childhood. I really can't go home again. Not to Lilac Wood, or Emerald Lake, or Starlit Hollow, or any place a unicorn belongs. As Neil Gaiman deftly put, delirium was once delight, and all that. I can't keep doing this anymore. I'll read one more poem from the collection. As I was writing it, I was starting to delve more into what I think I'll explore in a future collection, which is all the weird stuff that happens when we look at the history that has happened in the history of mental health and mental health treatment. And so this one poem is about the inventor of the lobotomy. It's called Look. He was the first to see the brain, shine a light through and watch the shadows on radiopaque walls. He thought all mental illness was fixed synapses in need of breaking free. Won a Nobel for injecting pure ethanol into his patients' brains. It's like she joined a happiness cult. She's as happy to fail as to succeed. He called it the leucotomy, from ancient Greek for white, clear, colorless. It was a whitening of the mind. It makes me wonder why I've ignored race in all of this. Depression is racialized. Weed is racialized. Thought is radicalized by the recognition that this world makes us brown folks matter. Look, Lukos is also a few letters from my birth name. But this is a transition diary between states of consciousness, not genders. It means not that my middle name is white light, is clear. Clarity is not always a cure. Complexity can be a comfort. If I am mad, at least there is a depth to it, a meatfulness. So now I'm going to read a poem that is out for submission right now. It's inspired, it originally was an erasure poem of an essay that I found called Everyone is an Addict by Dr. Carter Stout. And I really take issue with, I think, the kind of mentality that everyone has their, their fix or their addiction. I think addiction is really complicated. life situation, and I really wanted to just converse with that kind of viewpoint around. Yeah, you'll see when we get into the poem. So this one is called One Is. The age of unbridled ire and seam, where we stumble and miscreate behind the filtrate well. Perhaps gathering smoke in trees is never safe. But this, the addict, is strong. Opinions try to know people. They look at issues, severity, power subtly threatening. Your soul is evolved, but you reside in bound beings. This means you are a disease too. Argue with traps. Saturate the invasion with butter thoughts. You are still urged to succumb to. Health does not correspond to a cycle. Your bodies bleed just as well. The riddle to people is happiness. Punch the miserly. They seem to need less. Love, dreams, and feelings. Get narc snacked. Add to energy. Wither good. Soothe the world. A biased therapist only traumatizes the truth. Thanks, folks.
You're all just so amazing. Thank you. Yeah, on to Tina.
Hi, thanks for having me. I feel so honored to be included amongst all of you wonderful people. I just recently finished a manuscript for my book, so I'm going to be reading from that collection. So I'm hoping there's a through line through all my poems. It's a collection that really explores the speakers really trying to find cultural identity in a mixed, framework, but they're also seeking another, which is their mother. So if you hear the you, like in the poem, that's the mother. And my first poem, actually, like one of Maria's poems, has tomatoes in it. And I'm kind of excited about how just that one image is kind of talking to each other. So this first poem is called Some of These Things Survive. The smell of my mother's hair in the sun, the way the grass cuts our bare feet because we chose to go without shoes, the litany of shells spilling outside the front door, the sudden reward of the small out-of-season tomato plants, the ones that decide to grow up through the concrete, the white aphids my mother finds under a new leaf, the ones that look like grains of rice, the hands that pick them off, like when she combed through my hair looking for lice, the way we sat together in that bathroom for hours and nothing but our skin, the way she spoke to me softly in Visayan and I understood even when the words felt far away. The presence of her fingers, the pink natural nails, and the half moons that grew out of her, kept free from dirt and debris, the hands that touch my face. And this next poem, there's kind of like a narrative throughout the work, and there's these recurring characters. And one of the characters is a wolf, and it will be in my next two poems. The exact middle. Somewhere in the house where I grew up, you are looking out a window. You touch the white gauze curtains. Notice how the dust motes diffuse the afternoon sun. There are dirty dishes in the sink, but I can forgive this sin. You let a spoon fall onto the marble tiles, and I reached to pick it up, but you stopped my hand. Through the window screen, the wolf comes into the kitchen, the room barely big enough to hold its weight, and it eats the silver off the ground. Not content with this meal, it tears into our bags of rice, the sackcloth hanging from its teeth. The grains feel like rocks as I kneel onto the floor, trying to collect each piece. You watch it watching me, but say nothing as you wipe your hands on your apron, and the wolf lets out a low growl. This is the part where you tell me what it means to grow up in a neighborhood with only mesquite trees, how we moved to a city that sits on the coast but never go into the water, lest we be taken by the waves. Isn't that what you wanted? When we moved south, weren't you searching for something closer to your homeland? Shouldn't you be kneeling with me, sweeping rice into your pockets instead of handing me a broom? The wolf takes your offering and snaps it in two before circling us and leaving the way it came. Without any spoons left, you take out a knife and hand it to me like an answer. This next poem is called The Beast. So in this poem, I'm really trying to kind of more definitively define what the wolf is. It took my hands in its mouth, promising it would not hurt me. I did not recognize it, even though it spoke like my father. Sometimes this beast is a wolf, a country, a fire that turns everything into white ash, a command that says, find safety at its table, where my mother is already waiting. Her hands folded inert like fruit that has fallen off the tree, heavy with ripeness, with nowhere to go. My mother does not remember her homeland, where the mangoes grew along the shoreline, ferried by fruit bats towards Masamis. My mother knows only this table, the one she has been allowed to sit at, worn smooth by her silent prayers. I reach for her across the ocean of brown oak eddies, ferry a mango into her still hands, something to give her strength. So when I finally ask her to run away with me, she will be able to outrun a whole country. And this next poem is called Polyhug, and that is the Cebuano word for please. So in, I guess, my manuscript, language comes up as this thing that the speaker is also desiring. So this explores kind of how children hold on to language, how that language can help them access their, culture. So Polyhug. When I was a young girl, I knew only the word polyhug, the Cebuano word for please. It was the only word my mother spoke when she spoke to me. Bend over so I can rinse your hair, polyhug. Take these dishes to the table, polyhug. Stay right where I can see you, polyhug. With this one word, we created whole meaning. When I visit my childhood, it is the only thing remaining within a sea of silence. Now I have so many English words, like empty, wound, words to describe who my mother is, missing, words that can't capture this longing, the scent of ivory dish soap coming from her brown skin, fresh wet with shower dew, before I understood what it takes to be clean. Except maybe I am being dishonest when I write the English words first. She never spoke about my hair or the dishes or being lost. She was always trying to say, please. Please see me as I am, dark-haired, brown-bodied, polyhug. Please find me within the throwaway drawer, polyhug. Please don't leave me buried beneath the white lilies, polyhug. Please see me, please see me, please see me, polyhug. I was the one who did the erasing, even though I was young and didn't understand. Mixed daughters are given the sins of their fathers, handed the knife, told, cut the things that do not sound like assimilation. My father told me to cut polyhug from my tongue. It wasn't a matter of love. It was simply a matter of being American, half white. How do I carry this truth? My father teaching me to forget my mother tongue when all I want to do is scream, please. Take me to my place of origin, polyhug. Let me find my mother again, polyhug. Take this knife, I do not want it, polyhug. Polyhug ipakita kanako kumkinsa ako. Thank you. And I have two more. This one is called Culture of Lost Children. First, look down, find prayer, silence. Remember what you were taught sitting under filtered sunlight in a pew crafted from the bows of ships that brought your ancestors over. Leave space for God in the galleons. Leave space because God cannot swim. The war that displaced me happened a long time ago, before my mother was my mother, before she came to America and ate the bitter fruit called colonization. Am I too forward in assuming we carry it still in our bellies, hoping it will sprout and bear us fruit like the kind we were promised, like the kind that comes from home? Second, find the word galleon and its history erased in a different way from yours. The space within Manila galleon, large enough to fold bodies down below, pressed between leaves of silk and boxes of white porcelain bowls. My mother did not cross the sea by ship. Her name was not written in a log or taken against her will, according to her. But I feel it, like my mother's knocking in a different language, and my mother answering, how lucky I am to be here. All I had to do was give up everything I once was. And this final poem, it's titled, What Killed My Mother? And this is kind of like the penultimate poem to the manuscript. I once collected jars of broken seashells. It was my belief that made them whole. Growing up on the coast, the pastor used these vessels as a clever metaphor for God. Everything could fit if you went in order of importance: rocks, shells, sand, water, like some benign experiment. It would all fit together if I just leave the water for last. Never mind how glass walls cradle or a door weeps when closed. Never mind how my mother came from water, how the pastor's words carve out the parts that do not fit. But I believe God speaks in my mother's tongue. She comes to me in the body of a beached whale. It hurts to see her indigo skin bleached so she can follow me into the chapel. The pastor at the pulpit trying to make a ghost out of her. And I can see why I've left my own fingerprints in her skin, where I pushed her into a cup small enough to drink from, my lips wet with wine that tastes as bitter as blood. Then man in white hands me words like vessel and carry and truth until I am drowning. At what age did I discover it was my own tongue bleeding? God died a long time ago, according to the books, although they never say how, but I know it's when she touched that other shore, when children came out of her and spoke like their father. Thank you.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Serious whoa. Thank you so much. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's an honor to be part of the same thing that y'all are part of. Makes me feel special. One of the pleasures of hosting things and putting readings together is I just go by gut feeling, honestly. But then when you actually witness the reading, it never fails. Like some like magical affinities and coincidences occur. I was writing down the things that appeared in more than one reader's poems: seeds, palms, mental health, language, tomatoes, and wolves.
Ships.
And ships. I don't know what it means, but it's part of the magic of reading together. And I guess I'm gonna read a little bit. So I'll set a little timer for myself so I don't go long. I don't know how I'm supposed to follow y'all, but I'm doing it anyway. I thought I would read the poem that I pulled a line from to title this reading. Okay. It's in here somewhere. Thank you for
So weird watching you on the screen.
yeah. I'm sorry.
And you're right here.
Okay, so this is a poem dedicated to Sophia Dolan, who got me thinking about Sappho. The edges of your blue agony lodge less comfortably in my mommy globules than they did in the before times. Can't hear out of my left ear too well. Can't seem to motivate myself to have my eyes checked so I can buy new glasses with lenses that aren't scratched all to hell. This little nudge has me thinking about inevitable death as the horizon of the sensible. Okay, Grandma, let's get you to bed. Not to exaggerate, I mean, I could see the wall shrine of Mary when Elle pointed it out to me, but sometimes when the others talked, I just smiled and nodded at intervals, attending more carefully to the words that did come through, fragments like the verses of Sappho we have are all the verses of Sappho we have no others, unless another papyrus should come to light, etc. I told my therapist that I was lonely for God. In Decreation, Anne Carson does this lovely reading of Sappho's fragment 31, which, after having activated the dance of jealousy, begins a marvelous turn. Quote, all is to be dared because even a person of poverty, end quote, before breaking off. Carson notes about Sappho. Sappho didn't really write much about Anne Carson. Carson notes, Sappho is believed by some historians to have been not just a poet of love and a worshiper of Aphrodite on Lesbos, but also a priest of Aphrodite's cult and a teacher of her doctrines. Given this possibility, perhaps Sappho's poem wants to teach us something about the metaphysics or even the theology of love. Perhaps she is posing not the usual love song complaints, why don't you love me, but a deeper spiritual question. What is it that love dares the self to do? See a little straw poking out from the ruins of the temple to Aphrodite, and in my surmisal that it is a nest, I become a little sparrow asking, are you my mother? I, whatever I am, a bird, a woman, your human wife, approach the ruins of the temple to Aphrodite, having been a student of longing, inimical to the sanctimony of that anointed, self-styled Messiah, anxious to say the least about the imperative to eat the other, proselytize, convert, felt by his followers. Ask, are you my goddess? For whom I could become an academy, lesbians with hand mirrors and papyri, just fucking anointing each other all day with knowledge, taking as our model the subterranean affiliations of the trees, the spume of the sea. So that's my Sappho poem. And now I have to do things to make the other poems appear. Thank you. All right. And I'll just read a couple of the poems I wrote. My friend and co-editor, Emily Bark Brown for Hot Pink, often does these shared Google Docs. For a month, you know, they'll invite some people to the doc and we'll write poems every day. And some months I can't do it. The machine sputters. But September, for some reason, was really good for me. So I'll read a couple of those by your leave. Okay. September 1st. The gift of gab, the guilt of gab. It's why I always say I couldn't be a therapist, being a member as I am of the guild of gab, like the dyers or the weavers or whatever. Simone Weil's translator says young workers used to undertake a journey on foot across France. I'm not in France, but I wish I were. Do I though? It's probably the same as here, old cathedrals and fields of lavender, and Paris, the capital of the 19th century. For whom? It stinks and everyone has syphilis. I bathe in a copper tub in the middle of my garret. It's winter, and to warm the water, I burn the pages of my book, but it's for the best, being filled with gossip. So that was my vibe on September 1st. And this is my vibe on September 2nd. Shame, pride, desire, wistfulness, embarrassment, melancholy, regret, joy, whimsy, ennui, awe. Curiosity is a nice one. Give it something to feed on. Assimilate a subject's grammar and vocabulary, as it were, into your consciousness. It's nice if the subject interests you, but isn't directly related to your physical or emotional well-being. A low-stakes occupation for the brain helps keep the dread at bay, and there is so much dread. As Peaches sang, you could fuck the pain away, and sometimes you do, resting your head after in the nook of your lover. The feelings become physical, but that doesn't mean we can excise them, delicately removing the spine snake or the moody meat behind the eyelids. September 4th. Rachel says to return to your place of refuge, which was the library behind me. Around me says the lake widened as we left the wood, or the logos could be found in any word, anywhere. So why not here, I said to myself, in the brimful of my belly button and the white brow hair I pluck. A caterpillar fell from the bunch of basil onto the handle of my mug. I took it outside and studied reflexive pronouns. I took it outside and sent a text that read, "Morning, sweets, I love you." In the night, the coyotes howl, scaring Patsy not at all from her vantage in my nook. My back patch redolent of menthol, I am poised between strange allure and reciprocity. And then this is a poem about going to the fair, written on September 5th. Why is it my impulse to betray myself? In what way? Well, lots of ways. When I diverge from the path of my ancestors, when I hew too closely to it, and a secret third thing. It's September 5th. I'm eating my cold weather breakfast, oatmeal with a spoonful of peanut butter and a splash of maple syrup. I went to the fair. I rode the Polar Express. I ate fried pickles, a sort of everything bowl called the Boss or the Big Guy, and fried Oreos, the remnants of which I pawned off on Emma Binder. I want people to think of me as a tragically hot sophisticate, but I'm more of a goofy mommy. I've never dabbed the grease from my pizza. That's my gender, but not my moiety. And I guess you got to stop somewhere. So probably I'll just read this one and then we'll call it a day. This is September 6th. Brother, can you cue up a sunny day for me? The PFAS are falling on my head, the kudzu creeping northward. I am a forever chemical in the waters of poetry. Isn't that the most pathetic fallacy? Arrange a row of pee pads for an elderly dog. Read a sequence of short stories by Amparo Davila, in which a woman is haunted by a gruesome figure. It's patriarchy. Cloudy eyes are oriented towards me as if looking, see nothing. Simply by existing, I have fallen short, and occasionally, to turn the tables, I pass judgment on a universe that deigns to find me wanting cold comfort. Oh, Carruthers. Carruthers is a character I introduce in the 11th line of the poem. Isn't it a low, mean, miserable world? He nods understandingly, but our harmonious accord is a balm to my troubled soul. So thanks everyone so much for coming. This felt really special. I only wish that we could all be in the same room and hug each other consensually. Yeah.
It's nice.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Zoe. And thank you, everyone, Maria, Germ, Tina, and Serena, for those fabulous and beautiful readings. And this was really a great way to spend a little over an hour. Maybe we'll throw the mics open so everybody can say hello and goodbye as we move on into the day.
This was so lovely. Thank you.
That was so good.
Yes, thanks for
Wow.
having me.
Incredible, Zoe.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.